Welcome to Decoding the Code, the YouTube show for developers. Get ready for your host, Mark Backus.
Hello, I'm Mark, the host of Decoding the Code. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Since I'm a small content creator, that means a lot to me. So please consider doing it and enjoy the show. Hello everyone to Decoding the Code. Today we're here with Rob Kendall and we are going to talk about creation of podcasts or podcast creation. Hey Rob, how are you doing?
Hello, very good. People still laugh at me for waving in things like this, but I'm all about a bit of a wave. You're not in this. You wouldn't wave at someone in the same room, but like you're not in the same room. Plus, it's a friendly thing. Yeah. I'm doing well, mate. I'm doing well.
I think it's a new thing. It's also on meetings, after meeting, like bye. All right, so let's get started with some podcast thing. First, tell us about your podcast. It's called the Front End Podcast. Tell us a little bit about it. Not what it is about because the name says it, but what's the format? How does it work? Tell us a little bit about it.
So I was kind of a while ago. How long have I been doing the podcast now? About lockdown's weird. It could be 2 years. It could be 18 years. I have no idea how long it is. I feel like I've been doing it for about 2 years ish. I think we're on the third season. Pardon me. I'm having a bit of a break from it at the minute, but I started a couple of years ago. And I wanted to do something different than blogging. I was doing a lot of content writing. I do a lot of like long form articles because, as I'm sure you'll find from my tangential kind of conversation nature, I can't just keep to like people struggle to do 800-900 words. I struggle to do about 9,000 to keep it under about 9,000. But I wanted to do something else. And at the time, I didn't really have the resources to do anything decent with YouTube. And YouTube's like video is a lot bigger of a commitment because you've still got to edit. You've got to then edit audio and video, and you'll know yourself. This is a video. It's a lot bigger of a kind of commitment. So I wanted to do something else, and I thought, well, podcasting's sort of weirdly somewhere between sort of content writing and then kind of doing video. It's kind of the halfway house. I had a friend, Beth and Vincent, who runs a podcast called The Brave. I'd check that out. She's from around my neck of the woods in York. And that's all about kind of resilience in the 21st century. And she sort of inspired me to do it. And I mean this in the nicest possible way. If she could do it, I could do it. She didn't come from a technical background. She didn't have loads of experience of making something like that, but she just kind of went, I want to do it, and went off and did it. So I did the same. And the format is kind of similar to this. I ask people on the show, they come on, we talk about particular things. We had Matt Studdert on, who created Front End Mentor, and we kind of tailor it about that. So some of it is dev stories, like how your dev origin story, because I'm really fascinated by that. And I say this a lot on the podcast. My story is quite vanilla. I did computers, then I wanted to do programming. I learned programming, and now I'm a programmer. Where some people, they're kind of, I was a beekeeper in Alaska, and then one day now I just do JavaScript, and they have these really interesting stories. So we uncover some of that, and some of them are a bit more. I've had recruiters on talking about how to, improve your CV and get hired as a developer, and the kind of interesting tech that's out there. So I kind of tailor it really to the guest that's on, but a lot of it is origin stories and then particular topics to help other front end devs.
All right, that sounds very interesting. I listened to some, not all of the episodes, but so the audience knows what is it about. But before we continue this, I wanted to ask you, because I have been in sometimes still am struggling with the what they call, how's it called, voice confrontation, when you don't like your own voice, and when you record yourself and then you listen to it and you're like really not happy with the result. Same with video, but I think it's a similar phenomenon. Did you have that from the beginning sometime, or do you still have it, or did you struggle with that at some point?
Not at all with audio, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I was in a few bands when I was younger, so you kind of get used to like singing. So, you know, and in front of people and doing that in front of an audience. So talking into a microphone and then being able to edit that wasn't too big of a deal for me. And I don't have a particular affinity for my own voice, but I don't really hate it either. So that was kind of okay. I think, if I'm honest, a couple of video bits that I've done, I'm less kind of interested in watching myself back. And I think some of that's just that strange phenomenon that you have with video, reflection. Sorry, it's a bit like whenever you see yourself, normally it's in a mirror, so you kind of see an opposite reflection. Where in video, you see like an odd version of yourself that you don't normally see, and I think that's what it comes down to. But no, not with the audio. It's fine. I get irritated by my own voice because I talk quite quickly and I mumble bits, and like transcript software that I use for doing the podcasts. I'm English and I'm a bit fast and mumbly, so it doesn't translate me as well as someone who's slower and American. So I end up having to edit a lot of the transcripts of my own voice because it doesn't recognize the words properly. So it's frustrating, but I never really get, you know, like irritated or hate my own kind of voice.
Oh yeah, so you're the opposite than me, because I'm a little bit slower and I do a lot of ums and uhs, and when I edit it, I'm like, oh my god, this is so horrible. And but I don't want to edit everything out, because if not, it's very unauthentic and strange. Yeah.
Well, I use a bit of software called Descript, which I'd recommend. And it's kind of like a audio transcriptor. It kind of uses I think AWS in the background, but that cuts out filler words like ums and ahs. I and ah quite a lot, but it cuts those out automatically for you.
Oh, I might try this with this episode. So if you don't hear many ums and ahs, it worked. If not, I didn't have time to check it yet. But Rob, how does your setup look like?
I have a better one now. It used to be. In fact, I've still got it. I've got like a the webcam here where I'm looking into. That is a Canon EOS something or other. I'm not a camera nerd. But that's, you know, quite with I think it's an f/22 lens, f/22. We'll say f/22. So it's very kind of short focus, and you get like the blurry background, which is nice, and you can put stuff in front of it, and it, you know, zooms all that. In terms of audio, though, I had just a normal webcam that's stuck up there. It's like a Logitech thing that because I do these kind of things. I do the video chat with the guest, but then I just obviously deal with the audio. Have I still got I started out with these. I've had these for about, I don't know, a million years. They're kind of like some really badass gaming headphones that I got from Amazon for about 15 quid. And the audio is like, okay, but it's kind of what you'd expect. It's typical kind of cheap microphone audio. So I started with that, and then I moved on to this thing that I've got at the minute, which is an Elgato Wave 1, which is really good. It was kind of, you know, it's in that really good range where it's a really good quality microphone, but it's not sort of, you know, thousands and thousands of pounds. So I pretty much just have that. I record the stuff over Zoom, so we can just see each other. I kind of record the audio in the Zoom meeting, so just get Zoom just stuffs the audio in a folder somewhere, and then I kind of just edit it and sort of smooth it, massage it out a little bit using some online audio tools. But yeah, I just use the Elgato mic, and that's really good for it.
All right, and this is something that many people might wonder, like, this is something that many people might think it's necessary that you buy an expensive microphone, and it's not really necessary to have an expensive microphone. Or what do you think about that?
I think ultimately the end goal is to have better equipment, but it's a bit like, you don't need that to start. You know, it's the same with us as developers. I've got a Mac Mini M1, fabulous bit of kit. But if you can just get a really cheap laptop, you know, it's not gonna make you a better or worse coder. It's gonna, you know, maybe hamper you and make it a bit slower. But it's the same with anything. You know, I play guitar, and people are always like, oh, those Gibson Les Pauls, they're sort of £2,000 or £3,000, you know, and you're like, well, yeah, if you get one of those, but if you you know, it's not going to make you a better guitar player on its own. You'll sound better than you would with like a $200 or 200 quid guitar. But yeah, I think a lot of creation of what is essentially art can just be done with very little, because it's really about the content, you know. I mean, things like YouTube were founded on the principles of just people doing dumb things and filming them, and they're still some of the best content out there. But I think if you've got something good to say, just go about saying it, and there's a famous saying from someone somewhere, but it's the first thing you're going to do is going to be terrible probably, and you get better at it because you find more efficient ways to record things, better quality, you do audio processing after it, you save up a bit of money, you get better equipment, and you just go from there. But if you've got something at the core of it that is interesting to people that they're looking to listen to or watch or look at or whatever it is that you're making, I think that's the key bit.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like also with the video, you can start going on YouTube with some webcam, and then you get like the whole thing, and like the expensive camera with the lighting and everything. And but if the content isn't good, it doesn't bring anything. So same with podcasting.
Oh yeah. Plus, it's how you use it as well. I mean, I've watched YouTube tutorials on lighting for videos and things. I've got like a key light up there, which just casts a little bit more on, but I don't have the best lighting setup. It's bright enough. I'm not in a cave, but I've seen people with that have actually shown like tens of thousands of pounds worth of equipment look terrible, and then they'll go, "Oh, if we tweak these things, it looks much better." And I think if you give those people worse equipment, they'll make it look better. So I almost think the knowledge is the power. If you learn how to kind of master the thing, the tool, you'll get more out of it.
All right. Let's circle back a little bit. No, before we do that, I have to ask, you say a lot of times the word quit. Does that mean pounds?
Yeah, that's just British slang for pounds. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I always, I assumed so much, but I wasn't really sure. Let's circle a little bit back to the podcasting thing. Like your episodes are like 40 minutes long, around-ish, 40 minutes-ish. How did you determine that length, or did it come naturally from the format?
I try and keep them to about half an hour, so 30 minutes. Some of them run a little bit hot. Some of them run over a bit. Just it depends when you get into things. I don't like limit the guests. I'm not in the background like going. If they want to talk, I let them. It's better. I'd rather have too much and be able to edit it out, which I do sometimes, than not enough and have to pad it somehow. I'll be honest. It came from really. I kind of came up with this half an hour mark because I thought. That's what I kind of like to listen to. I've listened to podcasts at about an hour. An hour is just a bit too long for me. Like half an hour is quite nice. Plus, in an hour, you can listen to two rather than just like one episode. So that was part of it. And the other one was just kind of from a time commitment. I'd already decided that from a content creation schedule, like 2 episodes a month was enough for me. So like one every 2 weeks. And it takes me about twice as long as the episode is to edit it. By the time you've kind of gone through, edited the transcript, processed the audio, filled in my own bits where it kind of hasn't, understood what I've said, cut bits out, cut the intro and the outro, all that kind of jazz, actually uploaded it and then pushed it onto my separate website that I have for it. It takes me about 2 to 3 times as long as an episode is. So I was like, well, if I make it an hour long, that's going to be, an even bigger kind of commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same here. I had this show before, Whiskey Wednesday. You were on it once.
I was on it, yeah. I was on the Christmas special.
Yes,
that was great.
And that was 2 hours. Like it was way too long because people started like not listening or not watching it anymore after like half an hour, 40 minutes. Like I think the attention span of people, especially in front of the screen, is so low, especially nowadays in times where you are in your office in front of the computer all day and you watch people all day talking, and I think you get bored faster because it's all day, every day, same thing. You're sitting down, you're watching the screen, and
people are very good at people aren't traditionally very good at multitasking. They're good at, I like the Ron Swanson quote where he's like, full ass one thing rather than half ass two. But I think people can, to a degree, do more than one thing at once. So if you've got a podcast episode in your ear, you can kind of semi-consciously pay attention to that and then do something else like washing up or the gardening or I don't know, coding. So I put it on while I'm coding in the background because depending on what it is, you know, I can split my attention like that. But video is very demanding, I think, visually. And like you said, people don't have that level of time to just commit to it. But I like your idea where you've got a video and then like a podcast.
What else did I want to ask you? When you started your podcast, did you have like 1 or 2 episodes already available when you launched it? Or did you just launch with the first episode? Because I read that somewhere and I was like, man, that's such a good idea. And I didn't do that. How about you?
I I made that conscious decision from the start to kind of preload a load of episodes. So I think I did most of the first season I had in the bag before I even released it. Because it was just, it was giving myself a buffer, you know, because I thought, well, I'm doing one every 2 weeks. And even then then becomes this kind of deadline that you're like, if something happens in those 2 weeks and I can't record it, or I don't know, something goes wrong or whatever else. I thought if you've got a little backlog sitting there, you can kind of work through that and just push it out. And, you know, it gives you time to move things around and get more people in. And I kind of did that so I'm sure for the first episode, first season, I had about how many is it? 10? I think I had about 5 or 6 ready to go that I was kind of working through. And I try and do that as much as possible. I'd say I'm making a React course at the minute, and that is taking up like every second of time that I have outside of my normal day job. So kind of I've put the podcast on a little bit of a hiatus at the minute. Because I've got about 5 or 6 people lined up that were going to be on it, but I just don't have as much time to do it. And that has a deadline of like April, the end of April, it'll be live to get that out the door. But I still like to do that. I record as much as I can, and then you've got a bit of a safety net, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to do that as well, but then I have it currently once a week, and it's pretty tight for my schedule. So it doesn't take that much time. Like we take like 40 minutes or 45 minutes recording, and then I like 2 hours editing, and then like a little bit publishing the video and putting in the descriptions and the thumbnail. Then we are like at 4 hours complete, like total per episode. But if you're busy, it adds up. It adds up.
It's impressive that you do it every week. I think that would be more difficult for you to get a buffer, because like you said, you'd have to really just take a holiday from work and spend like a full week just like doing about 2 or 3 episodes to give yourself that buffer. That's quite a schedule, but it's impressive that you get that out every week.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit. If someone listens to this and they say, oh, this is so cool, I want to make my own podcast, where would they even start? Like probably by the topic, like what I want to talk about. But what else is there for preparation to be done?
So I think sometimes I didn't really do much research about it. I did that classic thing people do when they start a business, where they just sort of go, I like ducks, so I'm going to build a bit of duck business. And they don't do any kind of research. But I was like, well, if nothing else, if no one else listens to it at all, I would have talked to some interesting people. I'll have learned something, and I'll be interested. I'll have interested myself. And I think that's the same when you come to a lot of artistic kind of endeavors. It's the same with music. You should write music that you like, and if no one else but you and your mum like it, then that's still a win, because you've done something that you are ultimately happy with. So I wouldn't worry too much about what the topic is. I mean, there's every market you look at, there's tons and tons of stuff in there. That's one of the big things that puts people off with blogging. They're like, well, why would I write about Node? There's loads of Node articles. Yes, but there's no Node articles from you, so you should still write one to get your perspective. So I think first of all, I'd pick something that either you know a lot about or that you're really interested in. One of those 2 things, because that's going to keep you engaged. And I think the more that you can present your kind of excitement or your passion for it, that makes it comes across, to your listeners. You could talk about spades. Spades aren't historically very exciting instruments, but like you could talk about spades, if you're interested about them and really passionate and you can get that across, other people will go, yeah, that's really good, that's interesting, even though they have no interest in spades whatsoever. And then from there, I think it's about maybe finding, creating like a content schedule. So I definitely get some ideas. That's what I did. That was something I did, actually. I wrote kind of the first season out. I thought, right, here's some guests I'd like. Here's some topics I'd like to talk about. And then I started asking people. So I just literally went into their DMs or emailed them and said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Would you like to be on it? And they either didn't reply or they went, oh, yeah, that'd be good. And there was some other people like Emma Bostian, who she's just, I'm super pleased she came on. That was a very great honor because she's super busy. And we had to kind of delay that a few times because she was busy and then ill, but she came on. So I do a bit of a content schedule. So you've got a plan about what you want to talk about. Think maybe about the format. So how long do you want to do it? How often do you want to do it? Are you going to have just one person on at a time like I do? Do you want to have like a group thing? Like, what's that podcast? JS Party, I think. They have about 3, sometimes 4. There's like 2 hosts. They either have 1 or 2 guests on. So are you going to have a bit of a podcast party, or is it just going to be like this, like a one-on-one? So if you think about the kind of format and what you'd like to talk about and particular topics within your topics, and then go and contact people, see if they want to come on. And then I would look at how you're going to record it. So we've talked about the equipment. Don't go too nuts. Just get something that'll record something to a pretty good standard in a relatively quiet room. And then you can choose whether you want to do it over StreamYard like this, or Zoom, or I started off doing it on Skype. I did use Zencaster. That was really good. That's specifically built for podcasts. So you kind of do that like this. So yeah, Zencaster is really good. It's free, but you do that through your browser. So both of you go through your browser, and it kind of records both streams separately, which is a lot easier. I then use a platform called Anchor, which is now, I think it was bought out by Spotify. But that's really good. Again, it's all free. It's got groovy little fills and kind of intro music and other bits and bobs you can use. And it kind of helps you piece together your podcast. So like for me, I have an intro that I pull in, then you like literally drag a little bit of the main audio in, then you drag another bit in, then some little segue music. And then it publishes it all, syndicates it out to like Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere else. So that takes a lot of the burden off. But I mean, those are kind of tool choices. I use Descript. I really like it. I used a lot of other things before then. I think I used Audacity, which was a lot harder because I had to basically edit the waveforms and then put stuff together in like what's the word? Is it a DAW? DAW, like digital audio workstation, maybe. Like a kind of like a Adobe Premiere, that type of thing. Where you kind of multi-track editing. But I think the key things. The tools are the tools. I think the key things are thinking about what you want to talk about and with whom, and then trying to get those people on, whether you have to kind of bribe them on with something, or whether you just ask them to come and do it out the decency of their own heart.
Yeah, you said you made a schedule, and you beforehand you were like, oh, I want to invite this person and this person. Like you were way more organized than I am, because I'm like, I'm quite busy, and then I'm like, oh man, I need someone for the next show or in 2 weeks, and then I'm like, I just write people that I think have something like interesting to say, or from a topic that I love talking about topics that I'm not that familiar with, because I'm, as you said, that I'm learning something. Yes, but it's definitely good to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan at all, it might become more of a burden than fun, because it should stay fun, even though it might take some time of the time you have for doing stuff. But it should definitely stay fun for you and for your audience.
And I think it helps you keep the momentum going, because, like you said, you've got to. It's like a lot of things. You've got to figure out how you work best. I like lists and kind of anything that I can check off. I like lists and notes and organizing things. So that works well to my mindset, but it takes a bit of the pressure off, because like I said, I didn't want to be in that situation where I was like, oh crap, it's Friday and I need to push an episode out on Monday. I've got to go scrabble around to get someone, like just then frantically sort of edit it. And it does become a little bit of a chore, the editing. You know, I think if you can be a bit more fast and loose with it and just sort of, you know, record it and leave it in its relatively raw state, then that's great. I'd love to be like that, but I'm a little bit more kind of, I need to tweak it.
Same here.
Stuff.
I need to edit some things out. Also in this one, I had some things where I wasn't happy. I already know that I'm not happy with it.
Slice that bit out. So it does that can become, you know, by the time you've listened to the same episode that you've recorded, and bear in mind you were there when you recorded it, so by the time you've already listened to it through in the editing, you might have listened to it about 5 times. And it's like, I'm kind of bored now. So anything that can expedite that and make it a bit easier, it keeps it more fun.
I wanted to talk to you about also myth. I googled some myths about podcasting, and maybe you or we both have something to say to that. Let's just start and see where this goes. So the first one is, there are so many podcasts already, it's too late for me to make one. I think we already scratched the surface of that a little bit. As you mentioned, there are so many like Node articles and so on. There's always room in any market for good stuff. I'm not saying mine's good stuff, but I think if you find it, if you want to do something like that, you should just do it. You know, I think if you're doing it for a job, there's probably a bit more pressure on you there to actually like make it do something. But I think if it's something you want to do out of scratching their creative itch, no, there's always room for good stuff in any market. You know, you will find people who find it interesting. Yeah, I agree. Second one, I can't make a podcast because I hate the sound of my voice. Is something that I'm still struggling with. You said you didn't struggle with it at all because you had experience before with singing and so on. But maybe I can, the advice that I personally have for this is just like do your stuff, and maybe the first few episodes don't even listen to it too much and just publish it, and then you start with after 2 or 3 then you listen to it, and then you listen to it more and more, and then you eventually get used to it. But it is a very common phenomenon called voice confrontation, where you don't like your own voice. It's something you would have to live with. But if you want to record a podcast, just do it, and because other people don't find your voice weird, probably.
If you can identify what it is about your own voice that you don't like as well, like is it because you go or because you do like clicks or something? I don't know, what is it that you don't like? Is it because, you know, it comes across a bit high and tinny on recording, which you can fix with some like smooth editing and compression? I don't know. Maybe it's a gradual exposure thing. So maybe do like a test bit of an episode, like record 10 minutes of yourself doing like a monologue, and then listen to it back, and just till you just either, if you don't end up liking it, but you certainly don't hate it anymore. Maybe that's the way to go.
Like the problem I, for example, have with my voice is that I talk too slow and with not enough enthusiasm, especially on the interviewing part. Like now doing like these things, you know, on other videos I'm better, where I'm not talking with someone, but for some reason I get very robotic about it. Which people told me, it's not that bad, don't worry about it. But it's just something that I'm like, oh my God, this is so boring. Maybe also because I listened to it like a few times before. But
see, I would have said I'd have said you were very comfortably slow, which sounds like the worst compliment you give someone. Yeah, Mark, you're comfortably slow. But I'd say your voice is it's got quite a nice timbre to it, and it's got like a nice pacing, nice meter to it. You're not like, it's slow, but it's not noticeably slow like you've been hit on the head or something, you know? But I mean, mine's just, I'm just too quickly, especially if I get carried away. So a lot of people struggle to understand me. So you don't want that problem. It's like the opposite end, but yeah.
Yeah, when I interviewed Quincy Larson, he told me when he does interviews, he talks slowly on purpose, because when somebody listens to it, especially when they are not the native speaker, they can understand it better. And if it's too slow, you just fast forward your YouTube or whatever player you have for listening to the podcast, and it will be fine either way. So I think that's good advice as well. If you're in the same situation as I am, just embrace your slowness, and it's even okay. Embrace the slowness. The third myth, we also already covered that. I need to buy an expensive microphone in order to start a podcast, which I think is false. You can start with an okay one and upgrade sometime later if you find out that you like it.
If there are some terrible pop singers out there who they can be turned into fantastic singers with auto tune. If they can do that, you can make a good podcast with like slightly less optimal equipment. I think there's an awful lot of editing and compression and kind of EQ that you can kind of twiddle with and make things sound 10 times better than they were. So yeah, I just get honestly, you can spend for about £20-30, maybe the equivalent in dollars. You could get a nice little microphone that's either like a headset one or just on your desk, and provided it's in a nice clear room, it's well connected, you can twiddle with that with the audio processing and make it sound like a $10,000 one, and that'll be better. And then just build up to it. If it's, because that's the other thing as well, if it's something that you get into and you don't like, but you've shelled out £400, £500, £600 upwards of equipment, then and you have no real other use for it. Because I mean, to be fair, in Zoom meetings that you have at work, you don't need an expensive microphone. You probably just need to shut your partner up or your kid in the background. That's probably all the main requirement.
What's our next myth? I need to interview people who have big followings and are really popular. If not, my show won't be popular. And I think that's also wrong.
I've interviewed people with massive followings and it's done virtually zero for me. I mean, it helps if that person actually does a job of kind of promoting it. But I mean, even then, no, it doesn't really equate. It doesn't equate to that. I'm followed on Twitter by a lot of people who have massive followings, and it's done very little for me. So I think it's the same with the podcast. I think if it's good content, people will like it and share it, and then it's up to you to kind of promote it a bit as well. But yeah, I think that hasn't done anything for me. I mean, I don't, I'm not sat here like bitter about it, but I think just from an experience point of view, I've had some pretty big Twitter celebrities on, and it's not done anything for me, but it has been very interesting to sort of ask them and find out about that.
Podcasting is time consuming. What do you think about that?
I think it absolutely is. I think it's one of those, it's like any sort of skill, the more you do it, the kind of more refined you become at it. And it's that kind of economy of motion. I think it took me a lot longer when I started because I didn't really have a process. And sometimes you go through a few processes to find out a process that works. What I have now is very good. It's very repeatable. It's quite slick. If I may be so bold, but it takes me a lot less time now to do per episode than it did when I started. So I'd probably start somewhere and then just kind of think, be a bit mindful of it as you're doing it, and think that if there's any kind of bottlenecks that you get to where like, right, it's the editing that's the problem, or it's producing transcripts. The transcripts to me are always the ones that take more time. And I tried everything from using a paid service that was garbage. I used like Otter AI, which was very good, but again, I found it didn't understand me as well. And I eventually stumbled upon Descript, and that worked out the best. It understood me the best, and it kind of transcribed stuff better than anything else I'd used. So, but I went through about 4 or 5 different ways of doing that before I eventually got to it. I think when I started, I didn't do transcripts at all, and I kind of retrofitted them back on. So I think it's find a process that works and kind of keep iterating on it, like you would when you're deving. But in terms of like time consuming, I wouldn't say it's a time commitment, but it depends how much you put into it. If you're like you and I, where we kind of really want to do a lot more edits, it's going to take you longer. If you're happy to just kind of be a bit more like a raw interview and just kind of tweak it a bit and maybe smooth the audio out with some audio processing, then that will take you less time. But I've found for me, the ratio is about 1 hour's editing for every half an hour worth of like recording that I do.
Sounds about right. Even though I go over the audio with double the speed, if not, it would take forever. I go very fast, and then when I find like a too long a pause or something that where I stumble upon the words and I need to correct myself too much, and I just take it out and I continue in double the speed. But even though it takes double the time to edit it and then to upload it and wait for it. So the last myth, no one will listen to me, which is something that I also struggle with. It's quite hard to find people to listen to your podcast or watch your YouTube shows. But like what I understood from many people before that I talk with, that if you keep consistent, the audience will come eventually if your content is okay, is interesting.
I heard someone say something about this. I can't remember where it was, just the internet somewhere, but it was about most people give up at this, like the graph, like, effort and time, and most people give up sort of here just before it kind of goes a bit more exponential. And I don't know how true that is for everyone, but I think it was one of my podcast guests. That's who it was. That was a really fascinating one. It was a guy who ran like these crazy massive community groups on Steam, and he had the same thing. It kind of nothing happened for ages, then it just kind of went poof, exponential, and most people give up kind of before that point. I think you have to face the reality that it might your first episodes, your first blogs, your first videos, they're going to suck, or they're not going to suck, but they're not going to be as good as they're going to be, or as good as you think they're going to be, or as good as you want them to be. No one's going to listen to start with unless you've got a larger audience. Arguably you've got a bigger Twitter following, so anything you do theoretically should have a better start than say I do. But I think whatever you do like that initially, it's not going to do as well, but you've got to keep doing it anyway. And I think that's got to be the intrinsic motivation for most stuff like that, is you've got to want to do it regardless. I mean, when I started, I think I was excited because I had 3 listeners on the first episode. I was like, and none of them were my mum, so it's okay. And it wasn't me, so it was someone else. It definitely wasn't the wife or my friends. So it was strangers I didn't know on the internet. So that was quite good. And I think I have about 170 listeners a month, like the average audience. So
nice.
I'm pretty happy with that. It's not tens of thousands. I think the Ladybug podcast's one of the more popular in tech I know. They probably get thousands upon thousands, but they're all, bigger celebrities. They might push it a bit more than I do, because I'm very laissez-faire about it. I put it out there, but I don't really push it much, because again, I don't really have the time, and I'm doing it as a passion project. I don't get paid for it. I don't make any money. There's no sponsorships. So I was pretty happy with that. But I think, there's a certain level of just accepting that it's not going to do that well to start with, but doing it anyway. Because if you kind of went around with that attitude, you'd never do anything. I agree. Okay, is there one last advice you want to give to the audience about podcast creation? Something inspiring you might have to tell about this topic? I don't know if it's podcasts in general, but I think it covers a lot of these kind of creative endeavors, where I think a lot of people get hung up in their own heads thinking about things. So I think if you listen to nothing else and take nothing else away, I think it would be that if you want to do something, just do it. If you're thinking about starting a blog, you're thinking about doing a podcast, you want to go on YouTube, you want to, I don't know, the first step is doing it. Don't worry about someone else already does one, or this other one does what I want to do, but it's already really popular. It's already tens of thousands of listeners down the line. So what, if you want to do something, just get on and do it and learn the skills of how to do it. But don't let other people's success stop you from kind of finding your own,
Yeah. That's a nice advice. Definitely, like, also don't worry about, like, as you said, the first episode is probably going to be bad or not as good as it can be. And that's totally okay, because nobody really gives a damn about it. Nobody really cares what your first episodes look like or sound like, or like later on it's like, yeah, that's how he started. It's all right. Like, but it's, I know it's hard because I'm still struggling with, oh man, this is not good enough. But that's because I need to have everything perfect, which is sickness in itself. But yeah,
I think that's isn't that the saying? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or something like that. It's never going to be perfect. Like, never. Even if you've been doing it for 100 years, it'll never be perfect, because the thing you have in your head is never what it is. But that would be my advice. Plus, if anyone wants, if anyone's stuck or they're thinking of doing it, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to. My DMs are open, as the cool kids say. I'm quite happy to take DMs about it if you got questions, or I can certainly help you avoid some of the errors I made.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I will put your Twitter handle in the descriptions. And yes, so thank you very much, Rob, for coming on the show and for taking time out of your schedule to be here. And yes. Bye.
My pleasure, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in and watching the video till the end. Please give a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And I hope to see you next Monday.
Thank you for watching Decoding the Code. A new episode will be available every week. So don't forget to tune in next Monday. For past episodes, check out the website, decoding.show.